Hello pattern lovers. So based on popular demand, I have decided to come up with this tutorial to show you why you see me use certain measurements for my patterns, especially when I say that those measurements are not standard, that you cannot use them for every size. So in this tutorial, I'll be showing you how you can use your own measurements to calculate the right measurements to do, the right data intake to do for any size at all. All you have to do is to just watch this video to the very end to gain all the value. For my measurements, my bust circumference is 35, my waist is 27, my hip is 38. And then you're going to use the largest part of your body, divide that by 2 plus extra 2. Then you divide that into 2 again to mark out the space you see me have here for front and back. And then I'm going to start from the border line, which is serve as the shoulder line, and go down to my bust point, to my waistline, and then to the hip line. That will be the length of this blouse. We are marking the bust from shoulder to the bust point, from shoulder to the waistline, and from shoulder to the hip line. Then I'll mark them out this way and label them BPL bust point line, WL waistline, and HPL hip line. Now coming to the back, my shoulder to waist measurement is 15 and a half. For the front pattern, I use 17, and that's because the difference between my front length and the back length is just 1.5, and that's what I'll be using as the bust dart value. You will see that later. But for now, I have shoulder to the waistline for the back and shoulder to the hip line. And after that, I'm also going to label them shoulder line, waistline, hip line. I'll be drafting this pattern with ease just to create the right balance between the bust, the waist, and the hip. We are focusing on the waistline. The waist is going to be really fitted or close fitted, and the bust and the hip are going to be fitted but not too fitted. They will come with some ease just to create the right balance between those body parts. Do you understand? And you can do an ease of 0.25 to 1 inch depending on how much balance you want to create in between the waist, the bust, and the hip. But for me, I'll be doing half inch. Now coming to the back shoulder line, I'm going to mark the shoulder measurement divided by 2. My shoulder is 15, divided by 2 is 7.5. Then I'll go down to the chest line. And the best way to calculate your chest line is to divide your bust circumference by 6 plus 1.5. Then you add extra 1 inch for the shoulder slope. That's like bust circumference divided by 6 plus 2.5. Mine usually gives me 8.3, but I use 8.5 because it's easier for me that way. Okay, so after marking the shoulder measurement and the chest line, which I said my shoulder is 7.5 and the chest line is 8.5, this is what it's looking like. Next, I'm going to mark 3 inches neck width here, and then I'll be coming down here to 3.5. That's like my standard neck width and depth. So I'm going to just give it a square line using the 3 inches neck width and the 3.5 neck depth. And after marking it out, this is what it's looking like. This is just so it's easy for you to like give it the perfect neckline curve. If you don't want to do it that way, just go ahead and place your curve as you see me do it here and give it a round neckline shape. Next, I'm going to come down here to 1.5 for the shoulder slope for the front. Like I always say, this is not standard, and I'll be showing you why I use 1.5 for the front and 1 inch for the back. I'll get the midpoint between that shoulder slope to the chest line, and on that point I'll go in half inch and just connect it to the shoulder tip like this. Then I'll come to the bust line and take the bust measurement divided by 4. My bust is 35 divided by 4 is 8.75. Then I'll be taking half inch from the 8.75 I'm supposed to mark on the back here and add it to this front. And then remember I mentioned that I'll be using half inch ease, so that's like 8.75 plus half inch minus from the back plus half inch ease, and that's a total of 9.75. Yeah. Then I'll go ahead and curve out the armhole just like this. The next thing is to take the hip measurement, and I'm going to divide my hip circumference by 4 minus half inch, then plus half inch is 38 divided by 4 is 9.5 minus half inch that I will be adding to the back, that's 9 inches, then plus half inch is that takes me back to 9.5. So the hip measurement for the front is going to be 9.5, and I'm going to connect from the bust measurement to this hip measurement. We are yet to take the waist measurement and the dart intake, so I'm going to be connecting these two measurements now with a broken line because this is not our original side seam line. Once I'm done with the front, I'm going to come to this back pattern. First, I'll mark the shoulder, the neck width of 3 inches, and then go down to 1 inch neck depth, then give it this neckline curve. Next, I'm going to take the shoulder slope of 1 inch. And remember, for the front pattern, I use 1.5 here. The reason for that is that when you look at the front part of the armhole on the body, you see that it's deeper or curvier than the back part. And that way, when you're marking it out on your pattern, you make it curvier, make it deeper, and then the back armhole is usually more straight, because when you look at it on your body, you see that it's not as curvy as the front part of your armhole. So doing your shoulder slope this way will help create the right balance. And then I'll get the midpoint of this from the back shoulder slope to the chest line. Once I have it, I'm going to mark the bust measurement divided by 4 minus half inch, then plus half inch. 35 divided by 4 is 8.75, minus half will give me 8.25, plus half inch is, that will take me back to 8.75. Then I'll mark it and then cover the armhole using that midpoint as a guide. Next, I'll come to the hip and take the hip measurement divided by 4 plus half inch, then plus half inch is. So that's 38 divided by 4 is 9.5, plus half inch, 10 inches, plus half inch is, that's 10.5. Then I'm going to connect from the bust measurement to the hip measurement with a broken line this way. The next thing I will do now is to mark my bust span. That's the nipple to nipple divided by 2. I'll mark it on the bust point line and also on the hip line, and use my straight ruler to connect them like this. Then I will also come to the back and mark the same thing, but first I'll be going up here 6 inches as my dart length and come down here 6 inches as my dart length. 6 inches up from the waistline and 6 inches down from the waistline seems to work for most average size adults. So once I have the dart length, like going up 6 inches from the waistline and going down 6 inches from the waistline on the back pattern too, I'm going to mark my bust span on those points. Then use my straight ruler to connect them just like this. And it's now time to shape the side seam, and to do that I'll have to measure from this broken line here on the waistline all the way to the center front, just like this. Make sure you have the accurate measurement here, yeah, because any mistake can mess up the whole plan. So for this, for the front part I have 9.625, and I'm going to measure the same thing on the back, yeah, from the center back on the waistline to the broken line, and I'm trying to make sure that I have the accurate measurement. And it happens that I have the same 9.625 for the back. So I'll write it down like this and I'll go ahead and plus them together. Now remember that the waist measurement I'm working with is waist 27, yeah? Waist 27 divided by 4 is 6.75, and then since you are going to mark 6.75 on the back and also 6.75 on the front, that makes it 13.5. So basically divide your waist circumference by 2, and whatever it is you have, you're going to minus it from what you have, plusing these two measurements together. Do you understand? So 9.625 times 2, since it's the same for both front and back, that is giving me 19.25. And now 19.25 minus 13.5, which is the waistline, that is giving me 5.75. And this 5.75 is what we have now to shape the side seam of our pattern. Okay, and to do that I'm going to just divide this 5.75 by 4, and the reason for that is that a full human body have two sides, yeah, and when you're making your pattern you draft for front and back. That means that the front, which you will cut and fold, when you open it up you have two sides, and the back two sides, and that's why you have to divide this by 4, because it's 4 in total that makes up the two sides of the human body. Okay, and 5.75 divided by 4 is giving me 1.4375, and that is not on my measuring tape, so I'm just going to approximate that plenty number as 1.5. So 1.5 inches, now 1.5 inches is what I'll use to shape the side seam of my pattern. And to do that on the waistline, I'm going to start from this broken line and come into that same 1.5 this way, and also start from this broken line and go in 1.5. Then I'm going to connect from here to here and to here. And that's how this, just the same way we shape our side seam, and that's why I'm marking the line bold now instead of the broken line that I used earlier. So now the side seam has been shaped. Now the next thing now is to take in the darts, and to do that I'm going to measure what I have left now from this new side seam line, yeah, to the center front, I have about 8.125, because when you minus 1.5 from 9.625 that you have earlier, you have 8.125. Okay, now I'm going to mark it 8.125, then come to the back, start from the center back and measure to this side seam, and I also have 8.125. What I'm going to do now is to plus them together, and 8.125 times 2 is giving me 16.25. Now 16.25 minus 13 and a half, which is my waist circumference. Are we still on the same page? So 16.25 minus 13 and a half is giving me 2.75. Now this 2.75, since I already shaped the side seam, all I have to do is to use this 2.75 to take in my dart. And now we have two patterns, the front part and the back part. I'm going to divide this 2.75 into 2, and it's giving me 1.375. So I'll use this 1.375 now to take in my dart for the back, and also the remaining 1.375 to take in my dart for the front. Now I have two sides of the bust span line, yeah, that's the dart line. I'm going to divide this 1.375 into two equal halves so that I can shape take in my dart, yeah. 1.375 divided by 2 is giving me 0.6875. Again, this is not on my measuring tape. I'm using 1/8 measuring tape, and it's not there. So I'm going to approach, since it's more than 0.625, yeah, I'm going to just take it to the nearest measurement on my measuring tape after 0.625, which is 0.75. Or better still, just go ahead and use 0.625. Since it falls under zero point 0.6, yeah, you use 0.625, but I choose to do 0.75. So whenever you see me use 0.75 as my dart intake on the waistline, know that this is how I got it. I didn't just wake up one day and start using 0.75, and you know I've been using this for the longest time. So we have 1.375 left, and I'm going to share that into 3, and that is 1, 2, 3. We have the two sides of the bust span and the center back. So what I'm going to do now to take in my dart and to contour the center back is to do 1.375 divided by 3, and it's giving me 0.458 something. I'll just approximate this plenty number again because it's not on my measuring tape, the one I'm using, to 0.5. So approximate 0.5, and I'm going to use that now to contour the center back. This is 0.51, and then another 0.5 here and another 0.5 here, and that's half inch that intake on the bust span, yeah, and half inch contour or that on the center back. And this is what it's looking like. So now is the moment of truth. So I'm going to measure my waist measurement, starting from this first dart leg to the center front. Transfer what I measure to this other dart leg to the side seam, yeah. Whatever it is I have there, I'll transfer it to this other dart side seam line to the first dart leg, and whatever it is I have, I will also transfer it to this other dart leg to the dart we have on the center back. And I have 13 inches, and you know that my waist measurement is 13 and a half, yeah. That's like 1 inch off the waist measurement. And yeah, that is just how you go about your pattern. The next thing now is to tighten the chest line, and to do that I'm going to get the midpoint of this shoulder slope line. Once I have it, I'm going to connect it to the bust span and then take in my dart. So one of the easiest ways to do this is to use your calculated dart intake, the one you have on the waistline, which is 0.75. So you measure it and then you also mark it from this midpoint line, 0.75. Then I'm going to connect it to the bust point just like this. Then start from this shoulder tip here and go into that same 0.75. That's like replacing the dart intake. And I will go down to 1.5 shoulder slope that I used earlier on that point, and slope the shoulder this way. Now I'm going to take it from here to here with a straight ruler first, and then use this part of my curve to curve the armhole out like this, and this is what it's looking like. So I'll go ahead now and clean off the initial armhole because I no longer need that. Then I'm going to do my bust dart of 1.5, which is the difference I have here, 1.5. I'll start here and come down 1.5 and then connect it to the bust span just like this. Okay, so another way you can do this shoulder tightening is to open up this line here. Then you're going to close your bust dart. Once you close it, it's going to be transferred to the shoulder, and then you're going to measure that excess. That's like the space you have after opening that paper and closing your bust dart. You measure it and divide it into four. So mine is usual. If your bust dart is 1.5, just know that it's 3 inches. Okay, so 3 inches divided by 4 is still 0.75. Can you see that? All of this falls into your calculation, and that's how you have a perfect fit once your pattern is drafted with the right measurements. Okay, we'll be tightening this center back too later on the waistline, but first I will have to go ahead and separate this pattern this way, and then we go ahead and do that on the back. So whatever that intake I have here, that's like my waist that intake. I'm going to use that, go up half inch on the waistline and go down half inch, then connect it in a dart form again to the side seam, just like this on both sides. So doing this will help contour the back more and make it lay flat on the body once you're done. So you can decide to just close it this way that you see me doing it here, fold it and place it on the other dart line, and then you tape it down. Or better still, you go ahead and do this method. Go ahead and slash one of the dart legs all the way to the side, and then you apply your water glue and place it on the other dart leg, matching up your side seam line, just the same way you can see me do it. Once you're done, you can see that your center back is now distorted and the dart too distorted. So after reconnecting the center back contour line, what you're going to do is to just place your ruler this way on the dart length. That's the two of them, making sure that they are aligning, and then you're going to take your straight line this way. Then you take in your dart again, half inch on both sides, and reconnect the dart up and down this way. So once you're done, if you measured your waist measurement earlier before doing this, you will see that it has now added 0.25 to your measurement. So once you're done with this method, just go ahead and take out 0.25 on your waist measurement. Then I'll follow the center back contour line and add my zipper allowance of 1 inch. Whatever zipper allowance you're comfortable working with, go ahead and add it at this point. And then you follow the same shape you have on the center back to connect them this way. So once I'm done with that, I'm going to cut out the pattern, and you won't be cutting out the dart. There's a way you transfer your dart to your fabric, and one of the easiest way to do that is after cutting out your pattern and transferring it to your fabric, you go ahead, as your pattern is still on your fabric, you go ahead and fold your dart this way. You're folding on the bust pan like this, and then you use your hot iron to create a crease line, and that way you go ahead and measure the length. Make sure you also indicate the waistline so that you go up to your that length up and that length down. Then you take in your dart and sew it. Then to cut the front, you can also decide not to cut through any dart, especially if you want to test fit this pattern to see the fit that it gives you on your body. You can decide not to cut all this dart and just leave it. So the shoulder dart, the bust dart, and the waist dart. Or better still, you open up the waist dart all the way to the bust point, close the shoulder dart, and also close the bust dart. Just fold the dart and place it on the bust point line this way. Make sure you blend in the side seam. But in case you want to sew it, you want to sew the bust dart, you're going to come in from the bust pan to 1 inch or 0.75, and then you're going to reconnect your bust dart, and that's where you'll be sewing it to. You don't have to sew it all the way to the bust point. And then make sure you notch the dart values that's on both sides so that you know where you're picking the dart. Okay, but then you can decide to also close the shoulder dart, close the bust dart, transfer all of them to the waist dart, and you'll be sewing just the waist dart just as you have it on the back pattern. But yeah, after closing your bust dart, make sure you blend it in on the side seam so that you don't have any shortage. And then I taped it down, and I'm cutting out the rest of the pattern this way. So you're going to cut out also the dart legs on the waist so that it's easy for you to add your allowance and know where you're sewing to. Once you cut out the dart legs, you're going to add your half-inch sewing allowance all around here, and you're going to stop stitching the dart 1 inch before the bust point line. You can decide to measure the length that you have here now so that you know where you're going to stop stitching the dart to. And don't forget to match up your patterns on the side. That's the side front to the side back, and from the waistline up, from the waistline down, especially after transferring your patterns to your fabric, so that you know that you don't have any shortage or any excess anywhere. If there's any excess, you go ahead and trim it out like you see me do it in this video. But here your pattern is set. Once you try this method, you won't have any issues with knowing the right dart intake to do for any size at all. I hope you found this tutorial very helpful. If you did, let me know in the comments and I'll be seeing you on my next one. Bye bye.